everybody, and welcome to the first of 5 live Q&As taking place this week as part of our Ask AIT virtual events leading up to the CEO deadline on July 1st. And today we are here to talk about civil engineering and quantity surveying, and very shortly I am delighted to be joined by lecturer on both courses, Alan Duffy. And Alan will be here to give us a little bit more of an insight in terms of what these courses are all about, in terms of the structures of both degree programs, and also looking at the differences in terms of work placements and also the wide range of opportunities when it comes to careers once you graduate. Before I bring Alan on this morning, I just want to highlight as well that we have a range of virtual events taking place between now and 1st of July, which is the CEO deadline. And today we just want to, I suppose, highlight what we're putting in place for students between now and that deadline. We have a lot of virtual offerings with virtual guidance. That's 30-minute appointments with our student recruitment team, where you can talk to us direct about an idea that you have maybe around a course or a career, and we can try and steer you in the right direction. And also, we are also going to put in place an Ask Us live web Q&A, where you can come on and ask us any questions between 2 and 4 every day between now and the 1st of July. So without further ado, I'm going to get Alan involved in this morning's live broadcast. And when we're waiting for Alan to come through, I just want to also highlight that our team are here to give you as much guidance and support between now and the deadline. And we are here to try and give you, I suppose, a clear pathway in terms of what our programs and our courses are all about, but also to give you a little bit of direction in terms of, you know, what AIT life is all about and what way our courses will be taught come September, and to give you a little more idea in terms of what AIT is all about. So just as we're waiting for Alan to come through, just to highlight as well, on our CEO Hub, we have a blogs and a whole range of different style of offerings that will give you a little bit of support as well. So a little bit of difficulty with getting Alan through here, but hopefully he'll come through in a second. So yeah, in range of our CEO Hub, we have podcasts, and a range of different areas as well. So Alan, thanks a million for coming on this morning. We are
no problem, Danny.
Appreciate it. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks, Alan. Good. So, Alan, I suppose just before we get into the detail of, you know, both of these programs in terms of, you know, how they're structured and a little bit more about the course modules, can you talk? We'll talk first about civil engineering. There's a level 6 offering and there's also a level 8 offering. Can you talk to us a little bit about civil engineering as a whole? What is civil engineering all about at AIT?
Yeah, so I suppose initially you mentioned we have 2 offerings. Actually, we have 3 offerings on the CAO. We have a level 6, a level 7, and a level 8. But the level 6 and 7 are a very common offering. Both of them bring the students through a 5-year route to an honours degree at level 8, whereas the level 8 offering is shorter. It's a 4-year ab initio route. Without getting too bogged down in it, our level 8 has the honours maths requirement. It's a straightforward addition. You need honours maths, the points would be slightly higher, but it's a 4-year route to your honours degree. Coming in on the level 7 or level 6 programs, you do an initial 3 years. Level 6 is 2 years, level 7 is 3 years, and then you progress on to the 2-year add-on for your honours degree. So it's a 5-year route. I can get into that in more detail if you want, but I suppose just to go to the second part of your question, what is a civil engineer, or what is civil engineering all about? Civil engineers typically manage the design and the installation of infrastructure, so roads, bridges, sewerage systems, rail projects, site development works, anything in the broader built environment beyond buildings. Civil engineers, that's their typical area of discipline. So when you see a road, when you see a bridge, when you see a rail line, it's very likely that it was a civil engineer that was the key person, man or woman, involved in the design of that, in managing its construction. So all of the various things that you see, that maybe it's how the ground conditions are manipulated, how the structure is designed and put in place, how it's maintained. All of those things are the remit of the civil engineer. Now, we have other areas also for civil engineers, probably more specialist. They can go down a structural route, and we find an awful lot of our civil engineering graduates progress and work in along with building projects, rather than just say the infrastructure project. So the structure of a building often is something that the civil engineer is involved in. So it's a rewarding career, as you can imagine. If we think about different careers at third level, some of them tend to lead you towards a vocational type of work. So it could be something like law or medicine or business, where you're dealing with ongoing issues. Construction and civil engineering, we tend to think about them as project-based careers, that you're constantly moving from very large projects, one after another. So your work is very changeable, which is a good thing, and people tend to like that. What you're doing might be very similar. You're always perhaps designing, say, for example, a road layout, but you're never going to design the same road twice. You're never going to, you move on from one project to the next. Construction is a big part of the economy, both civil engineering and construction in Ireland. It's a multi-billion euro industry every year. We spend huge amounts of money on construction, as do all OECD countries. So it's something that there's always going to be work in. It's cyclical to a certain extent, that economies rise and fall, as we are well aware of, and with that then comes the amount of money to get spent on civil engineering, and as such then the opportunities for civil engineers. But at the same time, it's something that's constant down through the years. There is always going to be a requirement for new and improvements in infrastructure, and as such requirements for civil engineers to do their work.
Yeah, and just as you mentioned there, it's so many different areas to get involved in civil engineering. We recorded a very good vodcast recently with a graduate of the program. Stephen Keegan is working out in Australia at the moment, and he talked about all the different areas that you just mentioned there in terms of road, rail, bridges, range of different areas over the last 15 years that he has got experience in, both working here in this country and also working internationally as well. So just also to bring into that program, Alan, there's the level 6, the level 7 and the level 8. Can you talk us through, I suppose, the differences between the entry requirements, and what is the difference between, I know the level 8 is 4 years, but if you go the level 6 and 7 route, it's a little bit longer. So can you just give us a little bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, there's a couple of I suppose, principles at play on both systems. The level 6 to start with, a student can come along, sign up for a level 6, and typically a level 6 is a 2-year program, as ours is. And we would take a good number of students in every year on that, and they will do a lot of fundamental subjects or modules around the areas of construction technology, surveying, mathematics, business, all of the entry modules that they would need for civil engineering. The level 7 then would be a 3-year route, so people who've done the level 6 can progress and do that final year, their 3rd year as such, to get the level 7. The entry requirements for that will be quite straightforward, a basic leaving cert, and the criteria we set out in our prospectus. The points level for that level 6 and 7 tends to be modest enough, I suppose. It's in the mid to low 200s in terms of points, and then students who achieve a particular standard in the 3rd year, particularly around the area of maths, can progress on and move into the 2-year add-on, which would be their 4th and 5th years. The maths requirement is particular, I suppose, and there's no point. We might as well talk for a minute about maths. Engineering is, and particularly civil engineering, is a math. There is a requirement to be competent at mathematics. So we have quite a bit of maths in the program. So the students are expected to, I suppose, work at that. We feel we provide plenty of support. It's often something that comes up, how difficult is the maths, but we provide plenty of support. We have additional tutors on hand to help anybody who's struggling. But the maths is a critical thing. In 3rd year then, if students meet the required standard of maths, they can progress into 4th year. It's a particular requirement. If they don't meet that, we allow them to take what we call a bridge in maths module over the summer of 3rd year. So we really want to try and make sure that everybody who wants to can get into 4th year and get their honours degree. There's a number of reasons for that. Maths is very important for civil engineering. Number 1, but number 2, our programs are accredited by a professional body called Engineers Ireland. They're part of a broader global engineering recognition body. They require us to have a particular standard of maths in the program, and I won't get into all of that yet. But this bridging module, or this requirement for a higher standard of maths in 3rd year, ensures in our view and in their view that the student is of that standard. And at the end of the day, a civil engineer is out there, down the road when they're out working, they're making critical decisions. The structure of a building, the structure of a road or a bridge needs to make sense, because you're holding up very important processes, whether it's a train or a pedestrian bridge to carry people across the motorway. The maths that underpins how it was designed has to be correct. The level 8 then you mentioned, the level 8 is a 4-year route, so you're 1 year less coming into level 8. The other big advantage of coming in on the level 8 route is there isn't that I suppose Rubicon moment in 2 years, which it would be for them, that you need to get into the final 2 years. If you come in with an honours, is it a H4 in honours maths, that standard has been met in the view of the college and in the view of Engineers Ireland, that student has already demonstrated through their Leaving Cert their ability in maths. They still do a significant amount of maths during the 4 years. But they don't have to, I suppose, produce that extra bit of evidence in third year that the guys who come in on the level 6 and 7 have to produce through results. So I'm not trying to suggest that someone who comes in on the level 8 gets some sort of a handy life in terms of maths. They don't. They have to do just as much maths as the guys who come in on, and the girls who come in on the level 6 route. But because they've got their honour at the Leaving Cert, they're allowed, skip first year essentially on that 4-year route. So that's how our programs are structured. I know maybe I've gone on a bit much about it. It's a good opportunity for somebody who feels they want a career in civil engineering. I definitely would encourage them. Although I've mentioned maths at length there and some people find it difficult, I think anybody who has an interest in civil engineering should seriously consider it with us through the level 6 route if they're not able to get their honours maths. As I said, we have put in place very substantial resources to try and help people with the maths. We have dedicated lecturers, we have tutors who step in, we provide material for people to independently try and develop if it's an area that they're struggling with. And the other thing I'd say about the maths, from my own experience going back over the years, when you're doing your Leaving Cert, you're doing a very broad amount of maths. It covers absolutely everything got to do with maths to a large extent. Our maths is very focused. It's applied to what we want it for. So, if it's trigonometry, if it's calculus, if it's whatever, I know people are probably sick of it after their time in secondary school, but we really apply it to the situation that we're trying to address. So as I said, if it's designing a bridge, the structural calculations, it's very clear to the student, well, why am I doing all of these complicated calculations? Well, because here's where it's going to be applied. It's to ensure that member, that beam won't fail, or that the hydraulics in a drainage system is able to take the flow from an outfall, say if there was a flood condition or something. So it's very clear to see why we're doing it. So I think they're the two differentiations between the two programs, the level 6s and the level 8s. It's around that criteria we're trying to satisfy.
Yeah, and I think the reassuring message there is that it's not the be all and end all. If you're going to come into this course and maths isn't your strong point, because it isn't everybody's strong point, but the support structure is there in place within the Faculty of Engineering to give as much support to students throughout those 4 or 5 years as possible, as much as needed within both programs. So moving on to quantity surveying,
Yep.
Is there similarities? What's the difference between QS and civil engineering?
Yeah, okay. Well, I suppose quantity surveying is a relatively new program in the college. We're about 5 years up and running now. It's my own area of discipline. I'm a quantity surveyor originally, and I suppose I'm still a quantity surveyor. Going back over the last 25 years, I did quantity surveying myself back in the early 90s in DIT in Dublin at the time. It's the TU now. Are they similar? Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between civil engineering and QS in one sense, in that we're as people, as professions, we're both concerned with construction projects. Where they diverge, I would say that the biggest single issue, a quantity surveyor is the man or woman who looks after the money on the project, whereas the civil engineer is the man or woman who tends to look after the technical design issues on the project. So in any construction project, whether it's a new road or a new building or whatever, the three big things the client is concerned with is, what do I get? What's the scope? I want to make sure the building or the road is correct, and that tends to be your design issues. The second big thing is, how much is it going to cost? And that's really where the QS comes in. The third big thing, which we have a separate program in construction management, is how long is it going to take to get built. So most clients are concerned with the quality of what they get, how much it costs, and how quickly they can get it. So I would say the civil engineer is the scope man or woman, the quantity surveyor is the money man or woman, and then our construction manager tends to be the time man or woman. So that's a kind of a very basic way of showing the differences. However, all three areas work on the same construction project. So we come together every day, all day, every day, we work together. The quantity surveyor, I suppose, to bring it back to that, that's what we're talking about now. It's a 4-year degree. There isn't the same requirement for maths. We want to make sure the quantity surveyor can obviously add 2 and 2. You know, you're adding up the money, and the money is vitally important in our project, but it doesn't have that same level of difficult maths, if I want to use that word, that would be in the civil engineering. There's only actually one dedicated maths module or subject in the 4-year degree for the QS. However, maths is introduced through other modules, maybe got to do with finance or got to do with time calculations and that sort of stuff. It's a straight ab initio degree. We don't offer on the CAO a level 6 or 7 in the quantity survey, and it's just a single course. I don't have the code here in front of me now, AL 810 or something. But I would say on that 4-year degree, the student can opt out after 2 years with a level 6 or after 3 years with a level 7. We don't, I suppose, make a big deal about that, but it is an option. We have a placement component in 3rd year of the QS program, where the students go out in the 2nd semester. So from January in 3rd year, they go out and work in industry. Most of them tend to work on for about 8 or 9 months in that role, come back then to us and do 4th year. In terms of what the quantity surveyor does, I suppose you asked that question as a career, because that's what, say, a young person coming out of Leaving Cert is concerned about. What am I signing up for here? What might I be? As I mentioned about the money, so they're concerned with money. So typically, a building is thought about. A client decides, let's look at building a new hotel, for example. The question might be, well, where would we build it? You know, how much of a hotel do we need? But obviously, they'll want to say, how much money is it going to cost to build that 150-bed hotel or 200-bed hotel? Somebody needs to work with them on developing that budget. That's where the quantity surveyor comes along, and they will have expertise in trying to develop budgets. The project then will move on. Hopefully, the client will decide, yes, I'll progress this on a bit. we maybe go for planning. We'll do an outline design. And as that design develops from an initial idea to maybe drawings, maybe shapes, maybe it could be a 3-dimensional model, the quantity surveyor is engaged, producing reports, checking to make sure that the budget is not being exceeded or that it's been spent correctly and in a balanced way. There's no point in spending a fortune on the swimming pool and having no money left for your bedrooms, for example. Then the project probably moves on to the construction phase. How you go about the construction. Do you bring in a number of contractors and ask them all to price it and give it to the cheapest? Or do you start engaging specialists yourself, get somebody to do a substructure, somebody else to do maybe the specialist elements? The quantity surveyor advises on what we call procurement. How do you achieve the building, within, and obviously cost control, managing the costs, producing the documents, the contracts, the legal agreements between the client and the contractor, right through to the final build and fitting it out with furniture, putting in place maintenance contracts. So the quantity surveyor is definitely, I would say, the man or woman that's responsible for the money and the smooth, I suppose, procurement of the building from inception right through to occupation. We, in the 4-year degree then, we target those skill sets. So whether it's around understanding how construction projects are put together physically, you do a good bit of construction technology, as we would call it, the foundations, the bricks, the mortar, the mechanical, electrical, the windows, the finishes. A QS needs to know their bread and butter in that regard. We also do modules around subjects like how you accurately measure. It's important that you get your 100 square meters of floor finish correct. And there's a good bit into that. It sounds very basic on the front page, but there's a good depth of work to be done there to bring a guy or a girl up to a competent level of measurement. We focus on a lot of legal stuff. They need to know how contracts are put together. We spend a good bit of time on that. I mentioned about the time side of construction projects. We focus on project management, efficiently managing a project. An ordinary person walking down the road looking out at a building site might get confused and say, how do they understand what comes next and what time they need to order scaffolding at, or book in their windows or whatever it is. that's, there is a logic behind that called project management, and we focus on that in the QS degree. So over that 4-year degree, subjects are developed from a basic level in first year right through to a more advanced level at final year. The placement is a huge advantage on that degree program. It gives students the massive advantage of being job ready when they get to the end of the 4 years. And we at the moment, actually this morning before I signed on here, I have requests in from a lot of employers looking for a bundle of CVs for our current second years who are finishing up in second year. They want to take them on summer jobs. Okay. And this is real. I have them here in front of me. And if they get those they will get those summer jobs. And then they'll come back to us in September, and then hopefully in January they'd engage with that same summer job on a placement basis. So it's an exciting degree, and I think that placement gives it a massive advantage. Our current fourth years that are finishing up now are all in their employment. They've been able to keep engaged with their employers from last year's placement. I just see one of your queries popping in there, and I know you're probably keeping an eye on them, Danny. Can quantity surveying be done part-time? At the moment, it's not structured that way because we've kept it fairly busy in terms of the subjects, and we'd be trying to encourage students to give it their all when they're studying with the college. But we have found that the fourth year of the program, a lot of the guys and girls who are on placement in third year, when they come back to us in fourth year for that final 2 semesters, they tend to keep engaged with the employer and work part-time with the employer, albeit at weekends or school holidays. They're probably part of the social network of the employer they were with, particularly the bigger companies. Like if you looked at the list of big construction firms in Ireland, we would have put students on placement with a number of those big firms. So, for example, Mercury Engineering, the Jones Group, the Designer Group, King and Moffat. A lot of them are specialist contractors, but they will have kept contact with the students, all because they realize we want to get these guys when they're finished. So yeah, there's an opportunity to work part-time, I would say, definitely, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And a couple just of quick fire questions here to try and give people more of an understanding of what these courses are with their structure in terms of college. So class sizes, what are you looking at for Civil Eng and QS in terms of class numbers?
Well, we would limit the classes to about 25. Now, you'll smile, we haven't been hitting those numbers. I suppose the QS is a new program, so with any new program there's an issue around, novelty, and maybe people are not prepared to go with it. But I think our numbers are starting to steadily increase. But we will keep the class size to about 25. It's got to do with our own infrastructure, but also it's a very effective number, not to go beyond that. The classes will stay together right the way through. That cohort are in the same group. They develop strong bonds together, and it's the same for civil engineering. Now that can go up a little bit sometimes, but we would tend to keep the class sizes in or around the mid-20s. That's not to say it won't drop below that. It could be, we could have class sizes down into the mid-teens, but we try and hope to achieve class sizes of somewhere in the mid-20s.
Okay. And Mike has just written in a question there. He's asked, is there a global standard for QS, for example?
There is, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is. We are in the process of getting our accreditation. We're fingers crossed, touch wood, we get that okay. Accreditation is with a body called the Society of Chartered Surveyors Ireland, SCSI, and they are part of the global body for quantity surveying, which is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, RICS. Now, Royal, obviously, as you can imagine, it's a British standard. So it is a global body governed by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, which are London-based, and they govern pretty much all quantity surveyors around the world and set a standard. So we are very confident we'll get accreditation. We can't get accreditation until we have a cohort of graduates, which is what we have now, and we'll be pressing for that in the next academic cycle, which will be, hopefully we'll be going for accreditation come next December. So that's the global body that recognises quantity surveyors. What you would do would be, you get a degree with an accredited course like what we will hopefully have, and we'll retrospectively get a recognition for the guys who've already graduated, and then you enter a process called Assessment of Professional Competence with the global body, which is the RICS. They put you through a kind of an examination process. You have to submit your diaries over a period of years. You have to put forward example projects you've worked on, and then they They basically do an assessment, an exam through interview, where they assess what is your professional level. And if they feel you're at a prescribed level, they award you the status of chartered quantity surveyor. So it would have been something I would have done back a good number of years ago. It's rigorous enough at the time, but when you look back, you can realise that it's an important process. I didn't mention it on the civil engineering side. There's also a similar process to become a chartered engineer with Engineers Ireland and EI Engineers International as well. So they're a global body that create a standard or regulate a standard for civil engineering and all engineering.
Okay. And Shane has also asked about entry requirements for mature students for the level 8 in civil eng. I presume that is the same process across applied to CAO. And
yeah.
There's no specific entry. A mature interview would also be required.
Yeah, it's true to CAO. I'm not 100% sure on this new level 8 in civil, but definitely I was part of the process for level 6s and 7s over a number of years, and we assess them once they're over 23. If they're mature, they apply through the CAO, and we'd often bring them in for interview. And if there's a commitment there, there's no major issue. I'd have to check with Nori in registrations just to see if there are additional stipulation on this new level 8. There probably is around the honours maths and that sort of stuff, but there should be no major problem. We've handled that.
Yeah, we'll check that for Shane afterwards, and we'll send you a direct message afterwards after talking to our admissions officer in relation to that. A couple of other questions just to wrap up, Alan. In relation to the civil engineering course and QS program, work placements are embedded throughout both programs?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier about the QS program, it's a significant placement component. It's worth 25 credits. It's essentially, if just to give people an idea, if you do a year of a program, it's worth 60 credits. So that's all of your subjects added up. These are these European credit transfer system credits. The placement in the QS were 25, so pretty much half a year's worth of academic work. But we actually see it as been an awful lot more than just the credits. It's about building the overall value of the degree when you're finished. It's similar on the civil engineering program. It's built in the 5-year route. It's built into that 4-tier model. In the 4-year route, will be built in what will be their 3-year model. Again, it's a semester of placement, very similar to the QS. And again, the same idea, to create a job readiness in the graduate. We find that when the student comes back from placement, it's a transformative process. Their ability to work, their understanding of what they're studying is completely transformed. So we're very happy, and we feel strongly about the placement. Yeah.
Okay. And just to wrap, Mike also has written back, he asked a question earlier. He just wants to know if he receives his degree before certification for QS, once you're certified, will he be globally certified as well?
Excuse me. Yeah, we will be ensuring and making every effort that all people who've graduated prior to accreditation will get retrospective recognition of that degree. Now, I would say that the process of becoming chartered is a separate process that happens after the degree. That the accredited degree you get from us gets you to the first step of chartered, and then you need to work for 2 years in approved employment with approved supervision to become chartered. So, yeah, to Mike's question, yes, that's our intention. That definitely when you're complete, regardless of when you get the degree, it will be retrospectively recognised. As I said, we're in very strong expectation of having this completed by the end of 2020. So it shouldn't have any issue for anybody coming in now. For our current cohort, obviously we're strongly contesting. We want their qualifications to be retrospectively recognised.
Okay. Our 30-minute slot is up, Alan. Thanks a million for joining us today. We really appreciate it. For anybody that has a question that we haven't answered, remember that we are on our web Q&As every day between Wednesday, the 24th, which is this Wednesday coming, and the 1st of July between 2 and 4 p.m. every day to answer all of your questions. Also, send us a DM on Instagram or email askus@ait.ie for any queries, and we can put you in touch with the likes of Alan, who will be able to answer your queries with great detail. So, Alan, thanks a million. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I did see some great questions popping up here, and I know you're trying to deal with them, and I'll get straight on to them. obviously we can't have time to go through everything, but I haven't seen anything there that we don't have a fairly comprehensive answer for. So I just encourage people to come forward with any questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Send us a DM straight after, and we get your email and forward them on to Alan. Okay. Thanks a minute, Alan.
Perfect. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Danny.
Okay. Take care. See you guys.
Bye-bye.